My name is Deborah Bordeaux, and I'm going to give you some tips for effectively revising your writing. At this point in the course, you have likely received some feedback from your instructor and will begin working on the final draft of your literature review. I hope that these tips will not only help you with this paper, but also any other writing assignment you encounter. Believe it or not, the revision process is where the real work of writing begins. It is where you begin to refine your work until you feel it best represents your response to the demands of the assignment. Sometimes you will have instructor comments to guide you, but other times you will not. In any case, you should not limit yourself to those instructor comments. While they are an excellent starting point for your revision efforts and certainly should be heeded, keep in mind that this is a chance for you to take a look at the work in its entirety. Revise means literally to see again, and you should approach this process with that definition in mind. Also, it's best to try to get some distance from the first draft before beginning the next one. That's easiest when you could submit the draft in one module and then work on the final version in another one. Sometimes, though, you have to create that time yourself, whether it's a span of just a few hours or several days. This distance is vital for allowing yourself to switch from the writing mode to the editing mode. Additionally, as I'm sure you've experienced, once you've worked on a paper for a very long time, you are no longer reading it. Your mind is simply filling in what it thinks is there. This is how many obvious errors are missed. Taking time away from the paper gives you a fresh perspective. Finally, the revision process works best when you realize that you will not catch everything in one reading. Imagine trying to look at content, organization, evidence, and even grammar issues all at once. If you commit yourself to multiple readings, each focused on one specific aspect of the paper, you are likely to see real results in your revision efforts. First, read for grammar, spelling, and wording. Make sure the paper is free from grammar errors, especially the ones marked by your instructor. Be aware, though, that your instructor may not mark all errors and may only mark the first few instances of any particular error. Therefore, it's up to you to read carefully for sentence fragments, comma splices, and agreement errors. If you know you have trouble in this area, visiting Eaglet or the Purdue OWL can help. Don't depend on spell check to catch every error. As I'm sure you know, spell check will not indicate when you've used the wrong word. Finally, check all author names to make sure you've spelled them correctly. This is a common mistake, but it can harm your credibility as an author. Remember that you are presenting yourself as something of an expert on the topic. After you've looked for the surface errors, read the paper for the overall meaning. Here, don't worry about the small details. Instead, review the assignment directions and determine whether the paper fulfills the purpose as articulated in those instructions. Now look a little more closely at the paper and determine whether it meets the specific demands of the assignment. Does the introduction fulfill its purpose? What about the literature review? Do you have sufficient use of outside sources, or could you employ additional evidence? Here is where you can use the rubric as a guide to help you determine whether you are doing what is expected in each individual section of the paper. Now read the paper for organization. Consider the organizational strategies you used in the paper. Are they actually the best for the assignment? Look at each paragraph and make sure that it contains only one main idea. Do you have effective transitions between paragraphs, or do you leap too suddenly between your points? Read for format. What are the APA requirements? Have you met them? Look at your title page. Is it formatted correctly? Do you include both internal citations and a reference page? Remember that you will only include items on the reference page that you actually cite in the paper. Do not include all items from the annotated bibliography unless you specifically use them in the paper. Additionally, make sure there are internal citations for all sources, including those you paraphrase. Some writers believe that they only need to cite direct quotations, but you must show attribution for any and all evidence, even if you have reworded it. Do you have all of the required sections, and are the headings for these sections formatted per APA requirements? Read each paragraph. Are they sufficiently developed? Generally, a solid paragraph has a minimum of 6 to 8 sentences. If you have very long paragraphs, are you remaining on topic without drifting from the subject? Make sure you can identify the topic sentence of each paragraph. Every sentence should support this topic sentence. You should eliminate anything that does not and create new paragraphs where necessary. Finally, look at your paper at the sentence level. Do you demonstrate variety in your writing? You want to make sure that you have variety in your sentence length. You'll also want to check to make sure you have variety in sentence structure, that your sentences do not all have the same subject-verb-object structure. Do you show variety in how you open your sentences using introductory elements, for example? I hope that this presentation has helped you to revisit your draft and make some fruitful revisions. Editing your own work effectively is one of the greatest challenges in writing, but having a plan for approaching the process can make it easier. Thank you for your attention, and please check out the other videos in this series.